Marcia Week Show, and we're coming to you live from Barbados. Mr. Corey Beckles. Mr. Corey Beckles is an attorney at law, a husband, and father, minister of the gospel. He owns a bachelor of laws degree and a diploma in theology. All right, and so we are very, very pleased to have Mr. Corey Beckles with us. Hi, Corey.
Hello. How are you?
Great to have you. And we have with us also an attorney at law, and this is this is attorney Shirley Richards, and from Jamaica. And I've known her now for a number of years. And as the broadcast continue, you will hear a lot more about her. But she's been attorney, a Christian attorney, she says, for over 35 years. So she's bringing a lot of experience to us here this morning, and we're happy to have you guys. How is it going in Jamaica right now, Ms. Richards?
Fair to find. Thank you so much, Marcia, for having me. Mr. Beckles, hi. Good to be on the program. Thank you so much. Look forward to a good program.
Wonderful. Now, Mr. Richards, in Barbados, we are hearing a lot about the charter. And this has become a point of discussion because Barbados has just become a republic, and so our Prime Minister had said that there would be some changes to the Constitution. And as such, they started, to present a charter of rights for Barbados. And I just want to share a little bit from an article from in Barbados Today. And as soon as the article is available, I will share it. Okay, so it's right here. Okay. 1 second. All right. And so the article says Barbados plans for new constitution after transition to parliamentary republic in November 2021. And it goes on further to say, it's an article by Randy Bennett on the 30th of July. Come November 30th, Barbados will complete its transition to a parliamentary republic with the swearing in of a non-executive president and a new constitution to be settled on immediately after. She said while a committee would be established to lead those talks, ordinary Barbadians would also be allowed to have an input. And the she there is referring to our Prime Minister. That conversation will be led by the Republic Transition Advisory Committee, along with other members of civil society and the government, because there must be a Charter of Barbados that is established and brought to our Parliament before November 30th, such that we enter the morning of November 30th committed to the Charter of Barbados that reflects the essence of who we are and what we stand for. And this was a statement given by our Prime Minister, Mia Mottley. And so I want to ask you, Mr. Beckles, what is a charter? And if you could break that down for the average Barbadian, because part of this is that we want to use this show as an education. It's called We the People, as a source of education, I should say. And so I want you to talk to us. What is a charter?
Well, thank you for the question, Marcia. A charter really is a legal document that establishes rights and responsibilities. Now, if you look across the globe, you will not really see governments as Barbados has done. You will not really see a charter being resolved in Parliament that concerns the nation, but you will find governments making charters with companies, with local organizations, or you would see countries making charters with other countries in international law. But that charter, or the charter generally, would establish certain rights and responsibilities. Now, what I would say concerning Barbados is that the Barbadian government has said that this charter is not a legal document, but it has said that this charter contains the desires and the wishes of the Barbadian society.
Thank you, Mr. Beckles. Ms. Richards, I wanted to get your thoughts on the statement where the Barbados Prime Minister stated in Parliament that the charter is not legally binding. Should it be that we don't need to, as a citizenry, we shouldn't be concerned about this at this time?
On the contrary, I think you should be quite concerned. It seems to me that this is a document which will inform the legal document that is eventually brought within the ambit of your constitution. And so you should be very, very concerned, especially too, as I'm told, your parliament spent quite some time debating the same. So this is a document which all Barbadians should be paying close attention to. Certainly, certainly it was not adopted without rationale, So this is a document which all citizens should pay close attention to. And may I just say that Christians in Barbados should remember that they are not second-class citizens. That as a citizen, irrespective of your religious belief, you have a right, and should I say an obligation, to understand what is happening to your country and to take an active role in whatever changes are planned for your country. We need to get rid of the fear, and we also need to get rid of the thinking that has been cast upon us that we are second-class citizens. We reject that absolutely and totally.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Richards, for that, because I think there are a lot of people, especially because it has a lot of legalese to go with it, legal language, and people somehow feel like they are not competent to ask any questions or to even query anything. And what I'm hearing from you, you're saying that people, regardless of the religious persuasion, that they should speak out about this. Now, Mr. Beckles, what is there anything in that charter? I'm sure you've been over it many times. What are some of the areas in the charter that concerns you?
The charter refers to discrimination, and it says that Barbados opposes discrimination in any form, all forms of discrimination, Barbadians oppose. Now, persons looking at the word discrimination will say, well, nothing is wrong with that. But when you look at how discrimination has been used in international human rights law, and how the interpretation of discrimination or the application of discrimination to local state laws in USA, United Kingdom, if you look at how that has been applied to restrict religious freedom, then that is a problem that I have. The government is saying they oppose discrimination in all forms. What does that mean? Is the spoken word a form of discrimination that will be opposed? And we know that the church speaks, pastors preach, teachers teach. The church is involved in the spoken word. The church is involved in writing. The church is involved in speaking. So will the church be bridled by the plans that the government has for Barbados under this charter? So those are some of the concerns, but I'm also looking at the introduction of the terms or the words sexual orientation, gender, tolerance, inclusivity. Now, these are some words that have been placed within this charter that are strange to Barbadian society. Tolerance, inclusivity. These are not words or things that you will find on the Barbadian tongue as they speak. These are not things that you'll find in Barbadian society, but these words come from somewhere. And when you look into the international human rights law and everything concerning international human rights organizations, United Nations, just to name one, you will find these words being used: tolerance, inclusivity, that you must be inclusive. Societies must be inclusive. Societies must be tolerant. What does this mean? And these words have been used to restrict religious freedom. And my major concern is the implications of these words, the implications of the charter concerning religious freedom and concerning the freedom of persons to let Barbadians know their views on certain issues. Will our opinions, will our thoughts be censored, even though our thoughts and opinions, there are real opinions, there are our heartfelt opinions, will they be censored in this new Barbados?
And you mentioned words as tolerance and etc. And anybody listening, I mean, those seem like reasonable. They seem reasonable words. But let me ask Ms. Richards, based on your experience with dealing with similar issues in Jamaica, would you suggest that Barbadians and those in the legal fraternity who are concerned about the charter and the amendment of should they be concerned about if these are the words that are in the charter and these are the words or possibly could also be in the Constitution? Should they be concerned about this?
Mr. Beckles is dead right, and I want to commend him and Family Faith Freedom. Doctor, recognize the danger, spelled it out quite accurately. What alerted us, you see, in about 2006, 2007, what alerted us to the danger is just how Canada has changed. Now, Canada was possibly the first, or let me be careful, one of the first Commonwealth countries which adopted a Charter of Rights. And this was done under Pierre Trudeau. Now, if you recall, Pierre Trudeau was a very liberal gentleman. So what happened? I remember that we had a Canadian professor, well, she later became a professor, who came and assisted us, helping us to understand how the Charter of Rights changed Canada. And it was quite an eye-opening session. And it was that which helped us to understand what our country would have been in for had not certain limitations been placed on the charter. Mr. was quite right in identifying some of those red flags. May I say that even just having sexual orientation by itself, if there was nothing else, but the other words are also of concern, but sexual orientation is one of those phrases that is just loaded with, can I say, in the present context, which
Yes.
would provide ammunition for a court to lead the country down a certain pathway. That pathway would see you, I don't even say ending up, but along that pathway, you would have same-sex marriage. You would have a conflict in rights. Mr. Beckles is quite right in mentioning religious liberty. You'd have freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, parental rights. All of those rights would likely then be redefined within the context of the normalization of homosexuality, which is what the acceptance of sexual orientation does when it's placed within a document such as a charter. So kudos to Mr. Beckles and others within the Bayesian Society who have recognized the danger.
Wow. I mean, Mr. Beckles, did you, because I read it, honestly, I mean, the little bit I know about it, I didn't even understand all of those implications. And I want to ask those who are watching, remember, you can ask your questions and make your comments, and we will try to get some of the questions to our guests. But I on the face of it, I didn't even, I didn't see these things. And so are you in agreement with you know, with our lawyer here from Jamaica, that we need to be concerned even about parental rights and freedom of speech and so on?
Total agreement. And this discussion, these concerns, they not begin with this charter. A foundation has been laid in Barbados and in other Caribbean countries to change society, to change the values of society, to change the norms of the society in the Caribbean. I just look at our international obligations of Barbados. We have the Organization of American States, and we have certain obligations. Barbados has certain obligations to the organization. And those international organizations and international treaties, and when you look at the judgments that have been coming out of the Inter-American Court on Human Rights concerning sexual orientation, concerning gender, same-sex marriage, and Barbados is bound to observe and implement these decisions. And there is currently there was a claim that was made against Barbados before the Inter-American Court on Human Rights concerning these same issues. So when you look at what has been happening, we're talking about years ago. This charter, I see it as a firm declaration by the government of Barbados that they intend to implement whatever has been coming out of the international legal arena, what has been coming out of the International American Court on Human Rights concerning sexual rights and sexual orientation and gender. I see this charter as a firm declaration that Barbados intends to implement these things within the Barbadian society. And the only way, one of the ways, the major way to implement these things is through laws, through the law and through policy. But I just want to say, before you continue, Marcia, concerning parental rights, we have a situation in Barbados, and I believe in other countries, where parents do not necessarily know what their children are being taught, on a daily basis. Yes, we have certain subjects, maths, English, but what about health and family life education? In that health and family life education topic or syllabus, what exactly are our children being taught? And this charter is purporting to say that Barbadians will believe in sexual orientation and gender tolerance, inclusivity, as I mentioned before. How will this strengthen the health and family life syllabus? How will this affect the health and family life syllabus? Will the health and family life syllabus change in such a way that our children must learn about these different or these alternative sexual lifestyles? Will teachers and schools be more bold in crafting their syllabus, this syllabus for this health and family life education? And the major thing coming out of this, Marcia, is that this does not just affect Parliament and politics. It affects the entire society. It affects our children. It affects the kind of things that our children read and see in school. This affects Barbados on a total general level that we have to be very vigilant in moving forward, and especially as Parliament decides to make laws to implement certain things that they have in the charter, we have to ensure that certain norms and certain values are protected in Barbados, and not just Barbados, in every Caribbean country that will be affected.
Wow. So we're establishing that there are some, what we're seeing in what the lawyers are seeing in the charter, that they're concerned about the possible future impact on human rights, on the freedom of conscience, paternal rights, religious liberty, and, you know, the idea that there should be no discrimination, that then, you know, that there are some concerns, you know, about that as well. So, Ms. Richards, the Barbadian who says, well, you know, but it's not in the Constitution, or it's not, it's, you know, they have not changed the Constitution. And I know I asked you this in a different way. And the reason I'm asking that is because of what I see coming through, because they have bought, they believe when the Prime Minister says, but don't worry about it, it's not binding. Should we be concerned now that we have become a republic and we're going to be working on the changes in the Constitution in 2022? Should this be a concern for the Barbadian citizen in terms of the Constitution?
I would rather for Mr. Beckles to take that question, but let me just say, if constitutional change is being and it is added, then you have every reason to be concerned. That's firstly. Secondly, if constitutional change was not even being contemplated, the fact that the government has accepted such a document gives you every reason for concern. What Mr. Beckles said a while ago, in that this document, even if not placed within your constitution, will strengthen the hands of those who want to push certain things within the Barbadian society, particularly upon our children. There's a case, you know, in Canada, I think a year or so ago, of a father who was sent to prison for 6 months because he refused to call his daughter by the names that, and to refer to her as in the masculine, as she wanted to be referred to. And so he was jailed. Let me tell you, these things have long range impact. And, you know, so it is not enough to take or it is not wise. It's foolish to think that because it's not in the Constitution, and maybe I'd say not yet, it's not in the Constitution that one should sit back and drink sorrel. No, no, no. No, it's the danger is out. The danger is clear. There is a clear and present danger for all to see.
Yes. And Mr. Beckles, I'm asking now concerning the Constitution. You and I know that this year, come January, we're told that they're going to be these amendments are going to be made to the Constitution. I've just read the article from our Prime Minister, which outlines that. And so I'm asking you the question in a different way, because there are people here who are saying something different. So I want you to in terms of the Constitution, the amendments to the Constitution, should this be of great concern to Barbadians?
Well, what will happen, Marcia, is that there will be a new constitution. So this will be an original document. So there really will be no amendments to the present constitution. There will be a new constitution. But let's look at the structure of the present constitution. We have a preamble, we have the fundamental rights and freedoms, and we also have clauses, provisions that relate to the structure of government, how government is run. Let's look at the charter. Charter has a preamble, and it mentions certain rights, fundamental rights and freedoms. It mentions how society, the relationship between persons in society, and the relationship between persons and the government. When you look at those two structures, you can see some similarities. You can see that there's certain things in the charter that will at some point in time have to be placed within the Constitution itself. The charter I see the charter as a document that contains rights, contains freedoms. I spoke before about discrimination and the words tolerance, inclusivity. These are terms that have been used to form certain international human rights documents. As using the contents of this charter, using what has gone, looking at what has gone before, there is a strong possibility that this charter there's some elements of it will be contained in the new constitution, or it will influence the new constitution to a very great extent. We're just looking at the facts. We're just looking at the things that have been used in the charter. We're looking at the structure of the charter. We're looking at what the charter is saying. And if you're going to look at a constitution that governs the rights and the freedoms, that establishes these rights and freedoms of people in society, in the Barbadian society, there has to be something within the charter, some philosophical foundation. Because we're talking about philosophy. This charter of Barbados contains philosophies. It contains philosophies for fundamental rights and freedoms. And if your philosophy is wrong, or your philosophy has some issues with it, you're going to find yourself with a society where we don't know what is left and we don't know what is right. And one person is saying do this, the other person is saying do that, and we have a clash of rights and there's no balance whatsoever. And this is what has been happening in other jurisdictions, where we see persons fighting for these rights. And as soon as this person fights for their rights and the courts tell them, yes, you can have this right, you find that other rights, other fundamental rights are being diminished, because the person who is shouting the loudest, the person who has the more financial resources, the more political influence, their legal right has been elevated to a fundamental right. So the issue that I'm really getting at is that we are in a world, we're in a time, the 21st century, where legal rights are being seen as greater than the fundamental right and freedom. Example, religious freedom, fundamental. Every single country, would, any single person, no matter what country you're from, no matter what culture, they recognize the importance of religion. They recognize the importance of the expression of your religious belief. That is fundamental. But we have a world, a 21st century world, where countries are telling persons who want to express their religious views that they cannot say certain things and they cannot do certain things because it goes against who this other person is. It goes against the rights of this other person. You're discriminating by saying what the Bible says. The Bible that you believe, and that the Bible that has been written for centuries. They're telling governments and courts are telling Christians, telling persons who want to express their religious beliefs that they cannot do it. They cannot express their beliefs to the full extent of their ability because some other person does not like it. Some other person does not like hearing what you're saying. Some other person does not like seeing what you're writing in the newspaper or what you're writing on social media because it goes against their rights, their legal rights.
And these are some of the concerns where the legal rights are, are seen to be more important than the fundamental rights. Miss Richards, you have been part of the Jamaican Lawyers Christian Fellowship, which I'm going to ask you more about that towards the end. But I know that you had that group and yourself had some concerns with the Jamaica Charter of Fundamental Rights that were put forward in 2006. I think it was. What were those concerns that you have, and do you see any similarities with the present situation in Barbados?
All right, thanks. There was a book written by Professor Janet Epp Buckingham called Withering Rights. Let's call it a booklet. She really described in that book, she had cases, that different court cases, and how they had been interpreted. Withering rights. Now that made us wake up. Withering rights. So that the whole concept that interpretation of rights could be changed by our charter. That's one basic principle. Secondly, when you adopt a charter, which institution has the say over the interpretation of this charter? Does final power rest with the Parliament? Parliament shall make laws for the good of society. That is in our constitution, Jamaican constitution. That is in the present Barbadian constitution. Or does it rest with a in the long? Some of the questions: how would this charter affect our rights? How would it affect the institution of marriage? And I can tell you, although some of the words that Mr. Beckles has picked up were not in our charter, we realized that it was worded in such a way that it would allow some of these things, including same-sex marriage, to be inserted, it would give foundation for a court to eventually, maybe over a series of cases, to eventually impose same-sex marriage on the society. So a couple of things we asked the Parliament to do at that time. And as I said, those words, none of the words that Mr. Beckles mentioned were, or thankfully are, in our charter. But it had no parameters. It had no limitations. And we realized that in the present context, with how the Canadian Charter was being interpreted, that there was a lot of danger concerning the interpretation of that document. So one of the things we asked the court, with the parliament to do, and we're grateful that they accepted it, they preserve laws relating to sexual offenses. That would include the President Bogle law. They define marriage. They preserve laws preserving the status of the unborn child, you know, and they preserve laws relating to, oh gosh, it's in terms of expression, like pornography, that type of thing, because your laws that ban that type of thing, because you recognize that when a charter is that wide, that all sorts of rights can be claimed. So thankfully, the Jamaican Parliament accepted our submissions in those regards. We're grateful for that, you know, and yet it was not as bad as what is currently being proposed, or what is currently in this charter, which is before the people of Barbados.
Wow. It's very interesting and enlightening to hear you, Ms. Richards, talk about that, and to say that, you know, you guys were able to, you know, to convince the parliament to take a look at it. And I know your constitution was actually amended based on what my research, and so you yourself and your organization were able to make an impact on the charter, the amending of the charter. And I want to,
by the grace of God, I tell you, you look back and you say, only God.
I'm going to come back to talk to you about that organization, and for Mr. Beckles to talk to us about the organization here in Barbados, and to see, you know, just how that can be used, or these organizations can be used in situations like this. But there is a message here, a question here from Marcia Brandon. And she's saying, but isn't that suppressing other people's legal rights? I think she's saying fundamental rights, suppressing other people's legal rights. How can we make it so that everyone's legitimate rights are important and recognized? Anybody, either of you want to answer that question?
Let me just say that every country, every family, every individual will have a worldview, a philosophy that leads, a philosophy that guides. So it's left to the Barbadian society to choose which philosophy, within which framework your new charter will be interpreted. You know, you must see the dangers and choose. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem as if, well, put it this way, you must look carefully at the clash of rights that's happening in other countries. Mr. Beckles spoke about just speaking and so on, but just the very act of wearing a cross, a pendant, a cross, has been an issue in England, you know. And so you need to look carefully at what you, at those activities maybe, which you adorn with the word rights. Do you really want to give certain activities the adornment of the word rights? Do you really want to categorize certain things as rights? What do you want to categorize as rights? Because whatever you categorize as rights will rule the roost. You know, so you must look at the outcome and decide what you want to categorize as rights. You know, don't be unwise. Look at where these where these countries are now. Is that where you want to go? And Barbados must decide that for itself.
Yeah. You know, I know you have to leave very soon, Ms. Richards. So, Corey, just permit me to ask her, about the Jamaica Lawyers Christian Fellowship. And I want to know what is it, and I alluded to the fact that the Jamaica Lawyers and Christian Fellowship were part of helping to frame the Constitution, or to influence, probably is the right word, there, concerning the amendment of the Constitution. But what can you describe it for us, and how important is that organization to Jamaica?
Right. Well, at the time, yes, we do have a group called Lawyers Christian Fellowship. I'm no longer president, as president for a while, but it comprised and comprises Christian attorneys who are willing to stand up for the witness of Jesus Christ within the legal profession in particular, but within the nation generally. And so when we saw that, when we realized the possible implications of what was happening, we thought it was our duty to warn the nation of the pending changes. And I tell you, unlike what's happening in Barbados, this document had been sitting there for years. The process had been going on for like 13 years or something like that. It took that time. Yeah, it took that time for us to awaken, because you see, during that time, lots of changes had gone on in the world when they first started. And if we had made those submissions when the whole process had just begun, we would have been dismissed out of hand, because things were not yet apparent. It took all of that time, not only for us to awaken, and thank God we awakened just at the last minute, but it took that time for things to begin developing in other countries, in particular Canada. You know, we're able to see the impact of their charter on Canada. And so from that, we were able to learn a lesson. So thankfully, the Lawyers Christian Fellowship is still there. Now I'm more active participant in a group called Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society. And we have made certain things a priority within that coalition. So yeah, we're still there, and we give God thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Richards. So, Mr. Beckles, do we have a similar organization in Barbados?
Not officially. There is a group of Christian attorneys here in Barbados, of which I'm a part. But we will meet, discuss certain issues, and also pray. But in relation to, and if there's any assistance that other groups may need, we will do that. But not officially as the fellowship in Jamaica, as Shirley just said. But there are steps, and we have been looking at establishing an official body to respond to these issues, because these issues really are legal issues. The intentions and the actual actions of government in making these changes, they affect in the major part the law, and really the only way to advocate, or one of the major ways to advocate for the preservation, as Shirley would have mentioned, the preservation of certain values and norms in society, is through legal submissions, legal submissions to Parliament, to government. So attorneys play a very important role before, but also as it stands now, with all of the different things that are happening in politics and happening concerning our laws, not just in Barbados. Attorneys will play a major role. But I'm hoping that we won't call it Christian Fellowship, but the Christian attorneys, that group of Christian attorneys will be able to be more, play a major or more important role in ensuring that these norms and values in Barbados are preserved.
Mhm.
And that it is the preservation is said specifically in our laws, stated specifically in our constitution, because the constitution really is the supreme law of Barbados, the supreme law of Jamaica, supreme law of Trinidad,
Right.
and the constitution really affects every other law or policy that is being made in the country, in that particular country. So whatever is placed in that constitution, it has to be. I know I saw a question concerning the legal rights, the how the constitution would affect legal rights, or if the constitution can be changed. Yes, the constitution can be changed, but the constitution is such an important document, an important legal document, that it should not be changed willy-nilly, using those terms.
Mhm.
In Barbados, the constitution can only be amended in certain parts for there must be a 2/3 majority of both houses, of both the House of Assembly, both Senate. In normal circumstances, you will not be able to get a 2/3 majority in every case. But in Barbados, in Barbados, the government has the majority, so it is easy to amend. It is easy to make amendments to the constitution now in Barbados, because we really don't have an opposition in parliament. So the situation in Barbados is ripe for changes. Is ripe for the parliament to make certain decisions, and they have already done that, as we see with the charter, with what is happening with the transition to a republic. We are seeing some major changes because of the political situation here in Barbados.
Yes.
Mhm.
Wow. Well said. Well said, sir. I know you were saying something, Mr. Church. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say to Barbadians that don't be fooled by thinking that all rights will be given equal say within the sphere of rights. What we have seen in other countries is that invariably rights relating to sexual orientation and or stroke secularism take precedence over fundamental, what one would normally regard as being fundamental human rights. So don't be fooled.
Mhm.
The space that exists, it doesn't allow for all philosophies. All philosophies will not be dominant, will not have the same level of influence. It will not.
Mhm.
It hasn't happened, and it will not happen. So
Mhm.
this change will place Christian principles on the back foot. I just want Barbadians to understand that what you thought you had, you will now have to fight for, and only by the grace of God that you will get it.
Mhm.
It will place Christian principles on the back foot. Let me also make another point, maybe the last point, because I did tell you I had to go. Let me also make another point. Lawyers are essential to this whole process. And I commend Mr. Beckles, and I know there are others, in terms of seeing the danger and warning the population. They are watchmen because they have, with their
Mm.
knowledge and their expertise, they're able to read these documents and understand the implications and communicate to the ordinary man in the street the implications. That's one. But secondly, what will the people do after having had that knowledge? We would not have had the impact that we did if certain church leaders had not stood with us. I can tell you that. It was amazing to me that when we went to Parliament, Parliament was full of people. I think I remember one of the leading newspapers in our country the following day had a headline, "The church goes to Parliament." You know, when we got there, pamphlets were being distributed. People were there distributing pamphlets. Press conferences were called, you know, all sorts of things. So lawyers are essential, but there is need for mobilization by the people who care and the people who see the danger to the society. However, even if that doesn't happen, the lawyer still has a duty and a responsibility to sound the alarm to the nation.
Wow. Wow. And oh my goodness. I want to ask you something, Miss Richard. You said that you had over 13 years. I don't know if Corey heard that their charter was up for discussion 13 years. Corey, how long was this charter presented to the public in Barbados, or Barbadian charter, this new one?
I think we had public consultations for about 4 to 5 weeks.
4 to 5 weeks. And this is why a show like this is so important. I know, you know, people, they like the excitement and so on, but this show is very, very important. And I'm still going to ask you to share. Miss Richards has to go in a few minutes, but Reverend Ferdinand Nichols is coming on, and this is very important. I want to ask you something. You said something to me a couple of days ago, Miss Richards, that you asked the question: Did the government of Barbados take advantage of a sick nation? And when you said it to me, I tell you, tears almost came to my eyes, because I'm thinking, if and then coupled with what you said, that your consultation, or your the charter was there for 13 years, and we had it for 4 to 5 weeks, and it is now accepted. Can you comment on that, please, Miss Richards? I'm not even sure of the question I'm asking, because it's so overwhelming.
Well, listen, I don't know that the 13 years is to be taken as being of any virtue. But what it does suggest is that a document such as this ought to be given time. You know, the people ought to be given time to understand the implications, to digest the implications, and to even, you know, it should not be done in a hurry. It should not be a hurry come up document. And the fact is too, in terms of the COVID, really and truly, I feel it for the Barbadian people, because we all are under the threat of COVID, and that places just certain limitations on us. First, the COVID brings a sense of fear of the future. Full stop. COVID by itself, people are in a state of uncertainty. The big thing is, you know, we don't know what tomorrow will bring. That's firstly. And so under within that environment, ought a government to be doing all of this fundamental change within that environment? Listen to me, I have no problems with your country becoming a republic. You know, congratulations to you. And our government has announced plans. I can tell you, our government has since announced plans to go that way, and it has been considering that way for many, many years. Every prime minister we have had for the last 20 years has announced intentions to make a republic. But also now our government is looking at constitutional change for next year. So maybe yourself and Mr. Beckles will have to come and help us next year, because I don't know if a similar thing will not be done in Jamaica. But I just think that such a fundamental change as a charter in particular, and maybe even a republic, I wonder, I query whether all of this ought to have, whether this was a good time to have done all of this with the threat of COVID hanging over our heads. And I say our because as a people, we are people of the region. We are Caribbean people. What affects one affects the other.
This is the Marcia Week Show, and we're coming to you live from Barbados.
Gone too far, no. As I walk this lonely road, I know who walks with me. I can do this here just because.
Let them take it. They want to share work on us.
You can't jab me, I don't box. Anybody try to slip me, end up in a box. The last thing I had, chicken pox. Run up on the chicken if you think I use a fox. Tell a whole bunch of lies all the time, all of a sudden wanna care about people. If it's one irrefutable truth, the government don't give a about you. But the hardest thing is to know, I don't see that these people is enemies. When them talking, I just don't know. Certain things can't even get my energy. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. As I walk to the valley of death, I know who walks with me. I wanna already know. People tell me be silent, cause you don't see presidents dead ain't. But I rather get violent, cause I don't like really boat heading. Jump off the boat head first in the water. Can't come and bribe me with the chips and a burger. A man dead inside the jail for opening up his store. All I wanna want charge you with murder. Segregation, no race. Them safe zones not safe. COVID unit a disgrace to your race. Don't let nobody come and jet no money in your face. If they threatening your job, unvaccinated employees stand tall. And if you're done vaccinated already, and you know that this is answer the call. The hardest thing is to know. Hardest thing. I don't see that these people is enemies. When them talking, I just don't know. Certain things can't even get my energy. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. As I walk to the valley of death, I know who walks with me.
In the name of my children and my grandchild, I want to live in a country where there's freedom of expression. I want to live in a country where no despot can feel that they should hold the destiny of my children and my grandchild in their hands. Try to be a despot with me.
You can't jab me, I don't box. Anybody try to stick me, end up in a box. The last thing I had, chicken pox. Run up on the chicken if you think that you's a fox. Tell a whole bunch of lies all the time, all of a sudden wanna care about people. If it's one irrefutable truth, the government don't give up about you. The hardest thing is to know.
She cares about somebody.